everybody and welcome along to a brand new video. I'm finally back with another video. It's been a while, but here we are again. And unfortunately it's a slightly negative video today, as we of course had the Series 9 soundtrack to Doctor Who released last Friday, about a week or so ago. And in my opinion at least, unfortunately, it's a rather disappointing soundtrack. So let's find out why. Now before we get started properly, I just want to throw a few cheeky plugs in for stuff. First off, I'm no longer on Twitter now. I quit that a few weeks ago, so I'm now on Instagram. I am at elliot.smitheo1. The link is in the description below. Go follow me on Instagram there for updates on new videos coming, stuff about my life, and hopefully some interesting arty photos, because I do love a good arty photo as well. And the other thing, I'd love you guys to check out a video that I did recently, the vlog that I did a couple of weeks ago back over at Wembley. So part of my BBC apprenticeship scheme, we have weeks at college, a college in Wembley next to Wembley Stadium, and basically we messed around quite a lot and had lots of entertaining moments full of memes, vines, and niche references. Here's a quick teaser of what to expect.
Do you want to tell me about a good college?
Nothing to say around. It's good.
David Tennant's the best.
David Tennant is the best.
Apparently drinking cocoa.
Yeah, Coke too early in the morning is a little strange.
But you don't care, do you?
No.
No.
I can't believe you've done this.
This is the real pressing content, Elliot.
This is what the viewers want.
This is what the viewers want.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, hey, no one cares about that
Only the
now.
finest from BBC Apprentices, let me tell you.
Oh my god. That's been monetized. What are you guys doing? Where life gives you lemons.
So yes, do check out a good vlog. I'd love just for you guys to check it out. I really put a lot of hard work into that and it was really fun making, so I'd love it if you guys check it out. But now, let's get into the Series 9 soundtrack. So we had to wait over 2.5 years for this soundtrack, from, if you compare it to when The Magician's Apprentice was released in September 2015, it took us until April 2018 to get this soundtrack. So it's been a long time coming, and despite my negative title, there is a lot of good stuff on this soundtrack. There's a lot of great themes on there. There's a lot of nice stuff from The Magician's Apprentice. Lots of the nice The Good Man variations in there. You've got the sort of Missy's theme being brought out in there as well. So lots of nice little themes there. The very kind of atmospheric synthy style music from Before the Flood and Under the Lake. That was all the way around. That was a great sort of soundtrack they put into that as well. There's a couple of good tracks from The Girl Who Died and from The Woman Who Lived as well. A nice callback to the end of The Robot of Sherwood from Series 8 with that the track from the end of The Woman Who Lived, which we get on this soundtrack, with the extended introduction from Series 8 as well, which I thought was quite nice to actually finally get that nice sort of a Good Man variation in there as well, which is fantastic. The Saigon two-parter is not exactly full of music. We have got This Is Not a War, which is the piece we all wanted, but other than that, there's not a huge amount there. There is a track from Sleep No More, which is actually quite nice. It's a very sort of synthy, atmospheric style music that feels straight out of classic Who, maybe even 60s classic Who, and I think what Murray Gold said in the little booklet was, it's either what you wanted it to be for the last 12 years, or you'd skip over the track and think it's terrible. I'm kind of somewhere in between, but I do really like this style. I'm really listening it in proper banging, sort of massive headphones, whacking up the volume. You get some proper, lovely synthy sounds in that. So I think it's really a surprising but an actually quite good little suite of music, I thought there. So I really enjoyed that. And now and of course then towards the end of the soundtrack we get into the big stuff. You get Face the Raven, where I absolutely love the Death Is Locked In track with the electric guitars bringing up in the background as sort of a variation of A Good Man in there as well. Sort of fantastically, it's brilliant in the episode and also works so perfectly on the soundtrack. And then of course the 7.5 minute Face the Raven suite, which is just phenomenal. I mean, they have kind of ruined the first track when the Doctor's sort of having a go at Shilda early on. That bit they sort of, for some reason, really up some of the instruments, so it kind of ruins the track a little bit. So that was a bit of a weird change that didn't seem to quite work. But the rest of it, the next 6 minutes or so, are fantastic, and it's such a beautiful piece of music that I've been waiting so long to hear fully clean, so I'm really, really pleased we've got that. And then skipping over a certain episode for now, we move on to Hellbent, which is unfortunately lacking in music. It's got A Duty of Care, which is a fantastic track from the middle of the episode, which I've always really, really wanted to get released, so I'm very pleased that was on there. And of course, slightly surprisingly, you've got the guitar variations of Clara's theme as well, which are really nice to hear, and I was just a bit surprised they actually put them on the soundtrack, because it didn't seem the sort of thing they'd actually do. They'd kind of just miss those out, as they tend to miss stuff. So that was quite nice, but overall, a lack of music. Then of course the magical disc 3, the Heaven Sent disc, which is just phenomenal. 42 minutes of music, I think it is, from Heaven Sent, packed into one disc, one big 14 tracks of music, pretty much the whole score. There's a few pieces missing and a few slight variations of the TV version in there. But overall it is a very, very nice, a very enjoyable. I mean, the music itself is just phenomenal. It's so sort of a mix, almost sort of Beethoven orchestral style with Doctor Who style synths and whatnot in there, just kind of combining the two into such a sort of versatile and unique score for this episode, which is what helped make the episode what it was as well. I think this episode needed to have a strong score when you've only got one actor basically for the whole 55 minutes. So the music was what made that, and of course you've got the Shepherd's Boy at the end, the final track, which, although I probably don't love as much as some people, I'm not really gonna put it on repeat constantly like some people say they do. I don't actually do, but that's what I'm not going to do, unfortunately, because it is a good track, but I just it's probably not like my favourite track from Doctor Who that's ever been, that kind of thing. Maybe I'm just not quite as overwhelmed with it. It's still very good, but I don't think it's quite the absolute peak. And then disc 4 features the Husbands of River song. The score to that is about half an hour of music from there, which is a very mixed bag of music, if I'm honest. There's a lot of pointless generic comedy music, which is a complete waste of time and is just so bog standard, the sort of music that works fine in the episode, but why would I want to hear it on its own? There's just nothing special about it at all. What is good about this disc is the last 3 tracks. They're very, very nice. So track 12, I think it is got a nice variation of Enigma of a Song in there, which is just fantastic, a sort of piano-y variation of that, which is so lovely. For some reason they kind of messed up the edit of this, so they've extended the TV version, but then seem to really have a dodgy ending on this track as well, which is really rather weird, that they suddenly just sort of peters out the track rather than having a firm finish to it, which confused me slightly, when the actual TV version had a nice end to it. Why didn't they just use the TV version? Who knows? Then track 13, The Woman He Loves, which is the lovely moment when the Doctor River finally realises who the Doctor is, that this is actually the Doctor who's been standing here the whole time, and it's just a really nice, beautiful piece of music. I mean, it's kind of ruined in the second half when it goes all action-adventure-y, which just doesn't fit the feel of the track, but that bit is really, really nice to it. And then, of course, the Singing Towers at the end, 4 minutes 47, I think it is, of absolutely stunningly beautiful music. So nice to hear it clean, finally, with a mixture of a madman with a box and a good man, and just the beautiful Singing Towers theme as well. It's a phenomenal piece of music and a great way to end the soundtrack. So far I've been pretty positive about this soundtrack. I've focused on picking out all the positive points of it, but now we've got to look at why I titled this video as I did, why it is overall a disappointment. And well, you probably know what I'm going to say if you've watched another review or if you've got the soundtrack. You're going to know there's a huge amount of music missing. Where's The Witch's Familiar gone? We've got 4 minutes of music from it. When it's one of the best episodes and one of the best musically episodes of Series 9, there's 4 minutes of music from it. And yet the Husbands of River song has got 30. That is absolutely bewildering to me. There's so many good tracks missed off from it. The whole opening sequence, there's about 4 minutes of amazing music there. Perfect new variation of The Good Man, which I'd love to have heard. Of course, the sort of when the Doctor's talking over the intercom to Clara to try and in the city. Another fantastic track there. Davros opening his eyes, Davros dying, all that sort of music in there. The few ending scenes as well, with the Always Mercy scene. There's a good, easy 15 minutes of music that should have been on the soundtrack just from this episode alone. That isn't there, inexplicably, I think. And it's really frustrating because then you put so much pointless music from the Husbands River song on its own disc, and you've got nothing from The Witch of Familiar, basically. It makes no sense to me. It's also a disappointment not to have the rock theme from Before the Flood. That was a bit surprising, given that it was a really nice new theme that everybody liked. It's got like 500,000 views on the YouTube video of it, I think, and it clearly was very popular, and yet they didn't bother putting it on the soundtrack either, which didn't really make much sense to me. But there we go. And then looking towards the end of the second disc, Hellbent. What's going on there, guys? Why have we got 6 minutes of music from Hellbent? One of the tracks, the General's Regeneration, nobody wanted. Everybody wanted all the music from the Western style bit at the start. Why don't we get any of that? It just doesn't make much sense. A lot of the choices of music on this sort of CD doesn't make a lot of sense, I think, and it's disappointing. Even you look at like the Zygon Invasion, it's sort of missing the fundamental Zygon theme isn't there for some reason. It's really a bit bewildering why in some areas there's such lacking, and some areas there's just too much. You don't need as much of this comedy music in Husbands River songs as we've got. And yet for some reason, because it's a Christmas special presumably, they feel, oh, we've got to give it a disc because it's a slightly longer episode, even though it's the same length as Hellbent, and Hellbent got 6 minutes of music, Husbands River song got 30. Makes no sense. And the other obviously disappointment is we've got 4 discs, and they've got 160 minutes of music. 4 discs, a CD can take roughly 75 minutes of music. So if you times it out to 4 discs, that's 300 minutes, that's 6 hours. We've got about 2.5 hours of music. So there's a huge amount of wasted space on these discs as well. They easily could have crammed 10 minutes of Witches Familiar and another 10 minutes for Hellbent on there. At least pan it out to 3 hours, given that the Series 8 soundtrack was 3 hours, and that only had 3 discs. And arguably less sort of brilliant tracks, brilliant music to put into it, and yet that's got 3 hours, and this is shorter and has more discs. It's just, after we waited this long, I can't help but feel a bit disappointed. And there does also just seem to be some rather weird edits on some of these tracks, particularly the endings of tracks. They seem to have very sudden sort of surprise endings almost, where you're not expecting the track to end. It suddenly does, it's got a dodgy reverb to try and kind of give it a nice ending that doesn't really work properly. And it just seems to be a bit rough in places, I've found. And some of the suites, when they try to put different music into the same track, they sound really kind of disconnected and just don't work properly as far as sort of, for me, listening more deeply into it. So that's also a little bit of a disappointment, I think. I mean, there's no denying this is a good soundtrack. Haha, check out a good vlog, that'll make sense. But it's not anything special. I feel like when we waited 2.5 years, yes, I will say thank you so much for giving us 40 minutes of Heaven Sent. That is the number one thing we wanted from the soundtrack. And it's probably what makes it worth buying and makes it worth the 15 quid price tag or whatever it was, is those 40 minutes of Heaven Sent, because it is just so good. It's so sort of fantastic to listen to. It sort of creates such emotion and such excitement in listening to this music because it's so phenomenally well put together, I think. I mean, there's a couple of odd moments where the tracks don't quite match the TV version. They've got some sort of, there's a couple of off-key notes in the Veil, which was a bit weird. In the second track of the of that disc, which I just found a little bit sort of confused as to why that done when it sounds better played in the right key rather than played off key. So I don't know quite what they were doing there. I mean, a lot of it's down to sort of when there's extended versions of tracks and whatnot, it's usually that originally Murray scored for a longer scene and then the scene was sort of cut down in the actual episode, so then there's that bit of music left over. They just found a nice point. Whereas in his soundtracks, he usually tends to bring out the full version that he originally scored and chucks that on there. Hence why there's probably, I think, 3 or 4 minutes maybe of unused music in the Heaven Sent disc, which is quite nice to hear. There's some good stuff in there. But I kind of would have preferred if it was more screen accurate, shall we say, because that's the actual music we know and love, having listened to it for the last 2.5 years in the unreleased versions. So yes, I'm being pretty negative about this, just because I feel passionately about this. I love Doctor Who music, I love these soundtracks, and I really, really want them to be good, and I just can't help but be a bit disappointed in the lack of music in some areas, and some of the decisions of the music that has gone onto this soundtrack as well, when there's some particularly underwhelming tracks. And while there's not a huge amount more to say, this is an overall 7 out of 10 soundtrack maybe, with a 10 out of 10 Heaven Sent disc, a 4 out of 10 Husband's River Song disc, and a 6 out of 10 on the first couple of discs is probably the best way of putting it. But it does just feel like the first 2 discs you just zip through in no time. So I listened through to the whole soundtrack yesterday and it really feels like we've got through 11 episodes in next to no time, and then suddenly we're spending an hour and 10 minutes just on 2 episodes. I know one's really good, but it just felt like a bit jarring that we kind of, before you knew I was at the Magician's Apprentice, before you knew I was back at Hellbent, and it was like, whoa, that's gone in no time, because there's just not enough music from each of those episodes there. So it's, yeah, I can't help but be disappointed, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Of course, for a long time, my channel has been built around Doctor Who music and unreleased music and soundtracks and whatnot. It's basically what I started YouTubing on, well, way back when. I think it was in the beginning of 2015, I started doing Torchwood unreleased music, and episodes of music was my very original sort of starting of this channel. And then once Series 9 came around, I started doing the episodes of music for each episode of Series 9, which is when Doctor Who music really became a thing on my channel a bit more, with the Series 8 soundtrack before that as well. And then in February 2016, I started talking to you guys on the camera for the first time. I mean, that video is pretty horrendous, but hopefully I'm a bit better now and you're enjoying these videos a bit more. So that's kind of, yeah, I feel like I've kind of gone full circle with this channel, when the Series 9 sort of episodes of music were really where my channel took off. And now the soundtrack's finally come, and finally we can kind of close that chapter on Series 9 once and for all. And now, of course, the question is, where's the Series 10 soundtrack? Let's just hope we don't have to wait until the second of eternity has passed, and hopefully we will get it fairly soon. I'm optimistic that it will be in the next 6 months, given there was an email sent around by a BBC employee about 6 months ago, which said the Series 9 soundtrack was coming very soon, and then the Series 10 soundtrack would follow, and that turned out to be true. So I'm optimistic that it will be true for the Series 10 soundtrack. I'd be surprised if it comes before Series 11, given the sort of timescales in it all and how long it took Murray to do the Series 9 soundtrack. But maybe before Christmas, or maybe around this time next year would be my rough guess at the moment as to when we're going to get a Series 10 soundtrack. But there we go, guys, I've waffled on long enough about how much I'm slightly disappointed in this soundtrack. So do let me know, guys, what you think of this soundtrack. Are you just sort of in awe of the Heaven Sent soundtrack and just think it is an amazing soundtrack overall? Do you share my concerns and slight disappointments at this soundtrack? Or have you got any other opinions? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. But other than that, guys, remember to like this video, subscribe if you're new here. Remember to follow me on Instagram, elliot.smithy01, to see all the updates and new videos, stuff about me, this game of things going on. And other than that, I'll see you again, hopefully very soon, for another video. Goodbye.